I always begin with, I'm just going to reduce the volume just in case my computer beeps. Okay. We usually begin by just reminding ourselves that in this practice we have no rules. Or maybe we have one rule. And that rule is the moment you start feeling you've had enough, that you need to leave, then it's time to leave. Don't force yourself. For some people, 5 minutes of practice is all they need. For some people, it's half an hour. And for some people, it can be an hour. But what you want to reach is that space whereby you're not forcing yourself and you find yourself voluntarily staying. And in the same way, feel free to change your posture at any point. Feel free to lie down. Feel free to shift from a mat to a chair. A little bit about the posture that you're adopting. The posture you normally want to start with is a posture where you feel your body the least. That means there's nothing straining, there's nothing pushing, and very often, so many of us, we associate meditation with the lotus pose, some yogic pose. We've seen statues of the Buddha, and so we think in order to meditate, I have to adopt that posture and no other posture. But it's not the way many teachers that I follow define the practice. Starting point, space where you're comfortable. It helps if your spine is quite erect. It helps just because it places less effort on muscles, on your back muscles, on your shoulders, on your neck muscles, and you enter into a more aligned, more balanced posture where you can simply be rather than do the posture. So just spend a few moments just finding that posture that's comfortable for you, giving yourself permission to have that sip of water at any point to change your posture. And then reminding yourself how simple a practice this is. It's a lot more simple than we actually think it is. It's just about being present. It's not about having a quiet mind. It's not about wrestling with your thoughts. It's not about postures, as we just discovered. It's about taking in the present moment more fully, perhaps more fully than ever before. And the present moment, it arrives into our experience very often through the five senses. Your sense of hearing, your sense of sight, your sense of smell, your sense of taste. And of course, your sense of touch, which not only envelops the skin around your body, but also areas within the body like the nasal passage, within the throat region, within the stomach. So sense of touch, quite vast. And then there's that final dimension to the present moment, the mind. And if anything, the mind, it usually takes us away from the present moment. Usually, but what this practice is about is we're going to train the mind to be present with us here in this moment called the now. And I'll give you a very simple example of this. Try to wriggle your fingers and activate your sense of touch. The sense of touch around the fingertips. So you feel the surface upon which the finger is resting. Your finger might be touching another finger, or it might be touching a particular part of your body, or fat resting on fabric, resting on your lap. Now notice how you directed your mind to your fingertips. You directed your mind. And so the mind, it aligned itself with the skin around the fingertips. And then the mind, it began, if you see the mind as a library of information, it learned about fabrics, it learned about warmth, it learned about skin, it learned about touch, it learned about coolness, it learned about soft and rough. And notice how, as you tune into the sensations that enter into your experience through your fingertips, you need the mind to decipher the sensations that are being experienced. Your mind enters into the present moment to help you in this process of translating the sensations. You are showing yourself that you can focus your mind into the present moment, which is what's relevant right now. And this might sound completely ridiculous and a complete waste of time, but when you consume your food, this is exactly what you will be training your mind to do, to enter into the present moment as you prepare your food. You will invite the mind to translate the smells, the scent of the spices and the herbs. You will invite the mind to align itself with the different muscles that are involved as your arm picks up a knife, as your hand picks up a knife, as you move particular muscles. And then on to tasting and the different smells that unfold, the balance of your body. And why would we do this? You have already you have already started to discover why. Because you are beginning to discover how the mind can only focus on one thing at a time. As it focuses on the tips of the fingers, it leaves conversations, events, stories, we call them stories from the past, stories we've concocted about the future, and it joins us completely in this present moment. And that is how simple this practice is. It's one of sitting, if that is your posture. It's one of lying down, if that is your chosen posture in today's practice. It is one of breathing, because you simply are breathing. And maybe being very aware when the mind drifts away from the present moment, recognizing this, developing the ability to notice when the mind drifts away from the present moment, and noticing where it goes. But there is a difference though, simply because when you notice where the mind goes, it is beginning to dawn on you that you are observing this process from the present moment, and that wherever, whatever the mind thinks about is not a fact, it is simply a thought. And that is all you need to label it as. When the mind drifts away, that's absolutely fine. And you simply stick one of those yellow post-it labels on it. Thinking, thinking. It might be thinking about a relationship, something else that happened. Excuse me. It might be projecting itself into the future. Again, thinking, thinking. And in the monastery, which I spent a little bit of time in many years ago, the monk, he reminded me, when you find your mind thinking, just say, think. When you breathe in, think. When you breathe out, ing. Think, king. And you recognize that you are here present, but you are thinking from the present moment. And when that happens, identification shifts from the thought back into this present moment. The Zen masters, they have a beautiful metaphor to describe this process. They ask us to see thoughts as soap bubbles. Do that. If you do notice thoughts arising, they could be about anything. They could be about this practice. They could be about an annoying sound around you. They could be about a sensation within your body. See it as one of those soap bubbles. And soap bubbles, they can take many different forms, they can take many different sizes. Some of them are visually stunning, the way they reflect light. They have many different rainbow colors on them. They're quite fascinating. Do you remember how, as a child, we were so fascinated by them? The practice is to remember to understand that these are soap bubbles and that you are the observer, that you are aware of these soap bubbles. You are awareness itself, aware of these thoughts. And the very same Zen masters, they say that awareness is like a needle. And what happens when you bring the needle towards the soap bubble, or what happens when the soap bubble approaches the needle? It pops. There's a faint sound, and that sound, it returns us back to this present moment. Even the present moment, it's just a word. It's almost a cliche that doesn't mean much to many of us. But as we explore the present moment with our mind, we begin to discover that every moment in the past was experienced as a present moment, whether it was 5 minutes ago, 5 years ago, or 50 years ago. Every moment in the future will also be experienced only as a present moment. And so instead of a horizontal line, it's almost as though the present moment was a vertical line, consistently, constantly in the present moment. And what makes practicing in a group such as this particularly helpful, particularly special, is that even though we are all so far apart physically in different parts of the world, we tap into this present moment together. There may be moments that you will slip, that your identification will shift from the observer to one of those soap bubbles, but you can be assured that someone else in this group will be present here in this moment called the now. And it is this momentum that will bring us back, allowing the bubble to pop. There are countless trees around us in different parts of the world, different sizes, all experiencing a very unique and very specific present moment. The moon, our sun, with its solar flares, countless planets, countless other stars in the galaxy, all having a present moment, experiencing, all unfolding in this present moment, which we are beginning to tap into. Possibly what Eckhart Tolle refers to as the power of the now. Now, how do we access the present moment more consistently? Because I think we've all started to notice how easy it is to shift our identification from this witness back into one of those tiny little bubbles that surround us, some from the past, some from the future. For this, we will begin tapping into the five senses, which are our doorways into this moment called the present moment, our windows, our doors. And you can start with your sense of hearing. Start with the sound of this bell. Let the bell represent a new beginning. And a beginning, it means a new birth, a new start, a new journey. One where you can release the past. And if you're someone who's more visual, who likes to have a more tangible visual experience of letting go, then many of us have arrived into this practice because we've started to recognize how much baggage we carry with us. And I don't just mean our possessions, our physical possessions, I mean our memories, our fears, our anxieties about the future, two large pieces of luggage which we appear to be lugging around from place to place, from moment to moment, just out of habit, just out of sheer habit, because that's what we've learned. Two pieces of luggage, one in the left hand, one in the right, extremely heavy, one representing the past and one representing the future. And then we begin this journey, we get on to this shall we call it the train of life? We board this train and then we find the seats that we are currently occupying. But instead of placing these heavy pieces of luggage in the spaces provided, the luggage compartments, instead we, through habit, have chosen to keep one of the bags on our laps. And it's a very large piece of luggage. Only you know how large and heavy this piece of luggage is that you've been lugging around, that you've been carrying around. Where do you put the second piece of luggage? You run out of space. Now, the second piece of luggage, you might balance it on top of your head. Never questioning. Isn't that what it feels like to remember the past, which has long gone? Wounds from the past, pains from the past. And then you find yourself in this practice. You find yourself in this practice where something within you has brought you here just to remind you to pause, just to pause, just to stand back, just to stand above your beliefs, your habits. And this bell, the bell you just heard, it represents this pause. Where you release your beliefs, you release everything. You release everything just to objectively observe yourself sitting here with all of this baggage, some on your lap, some on top of your head, and then there's a strain in the neck. And you might even notice within your body pockets of tightness, of tension that you never realized were there before. Flexed muscles, tight jawbones, eyebrows, clenched skin around the forehead, tight shoulders, all necessary in order to hold on to these pieces of luggage. But as you pause, it's so much easier to look around, no longer in a hurry, because that's another essential quality of the present moment, where you release the need to be somewhere else, to move into the next chapter. You release that and you patiently look around you and you notice the luggage compartments. They might be overhead, they might be under your seat, they might be to the side. And when we hear the bell, we put away these two pieces of luggage. That's all. We don't discard it. We do not throw it away because we need this information. Within the mind contains all of the languages that we learned. We learned where the hand is. We learned about computers and technology. And so there is a lot of useful material and tools within the mind. Just as You keep different types of clothing inside your suitcase. Some of them are thick and warm, some of them light and cool. Just as with the luggage, when you're on holiday, for example, you choose which piece of clothing you are going to be using at any point. When you go to a fancy restaurant or somewhere quite trendy, you might choose quite a stylish outfit. When you're going to bed, you want something soft, comfortable that will allow your skin to breathe. You choosing the garment, the piece of clothing that's relevant to your present moment, whether you're going to bed or you're going out, possibly on an adventure. And so you place this piece of luggage there, you place your past in the compartment, you place that future next to it or in a different compartment, and it takes a few moments just to loosen your muscles. How long have you been carrying this piece of luggage? Depending on how long you've been carrying the luggage, that's how tight your muscles are. Use this belt to loosen all of the muscles, the skin around your face. And now your scalp and the sides of the head and the back of the head. And now the muscle and the bone underneath, and underneath the bone, the brain and the eyes and the tiny bones within the ear. And your jawbone and your lips and your cheeks. Feeling so much lighter, so much more at ease. What does ease feel like to you? What does comfort feel like to you? What does letting go feel like to you? And feel it within your body. And your neck and your shoulders. Your neck completely loose, having to no longer balance that heavy piece of luggage that had been placed on top of you. Your shoulders loosening, feeling your arms, the weight of your arms pulling your shoulders down. Kindness moving through your chest and your upper back and all of the organs in between. Maybe that's what letting go feels like. It feels like kindness. It feels like gentleness, like being soothed, being comforted. And the mid regions of your body and the stomach with its digestive system. And one thing you will discover as you release the past and the future is a great deal of comfort descending and returning back into your digestive system, into the stomach. Because many of us, there has been a continuous outflow of acids and many different chemicals within the stomach that give us that feeling of butterflies and concern. Many of us have been experiencing these imbalances within the stomach for a very long time. And it may take a few more moments just to let it sink in. The past released. The past no longer relevant. Other than to translate the present moment. And right now, that information from the mind is helping us to identify where the stomach is, what the digestive system is. Maybe the mind is even allowing us and assisting us in the releasing of these intentions, that there be balance, that there be stillness. That all be released. And the lower back, the lower back muscles that wrap themselves around the spinal column. And now that you are aware of your spinal column, following your spinal column upward vertebra by vertebra, and if you like, stretching your spinal column upward, just so that you get a better feel for its arch, for its ability to balance the whole upper body on the pelvic bone, its ability to hold the head up. Less effort being required within the neck muscles, within the shoulders, entering into a deeper state of just being balanced. And the pelvic region, and the upper leg, and the knee joint, the calves, the shin, ankles, tiny bones within the feet, the joints that make up the toes, and with the ringing of this bell, just awakening the sense of touch that envelops your whole body, so that you simply become aware of yourself as a sitting, breathing body. of consciousness, of awareness, of presence. Aware of your elbows, the major muscle groups within your upper arm and your forearms and your wrist, the joints that make up your fingers. Now complete. Recognizing your ability to identify the temperature of the space that you find your body in, through those parts of the body that are exposed to this space, to this air. As you hear my words, be aware of your ability to direct your mind. It is you who are directing your mind, not me. Even with regard to the words that you are hearing, they are simply sounds originating from my vocal cords. Sounds with gaps in between. Sounds that consist of vibrating air molecules that mean nothing. Just vibrating air molecules. They move through the passages of your ear, they move into the eardrum. There are vibrations within the eardrum. And these vibrations, they create a chain reaction within the tiny bones inside the ear. Again, they're still vibrating bones. And these bones, they seem to connect themselves through some nerves that make their way into the brain as electrical signals. They still are completely devoid of meaning. Electrical signals that then get filtered through that library of information that we have referred to quite consistently in today's practice as the mind, a library of information. And some of the information in that mind includes a language picked up called the English language. And then, as these electrical signals pass through the mind, you begin the process of giving meaning to these sounds. And so it is not me who is guiding you. You are directing your mind. And right now you are directing your mind to all of those exposed areas around your body that interact with the air around you. Now direct your mind to inspect or experience those parts of the body covered in fabric, covered in clothing. Discover the material. Is it stretchy? Is it loose? Is it breathable? Notice all of the different labels, meanings, interpretations that arise. as the mind aligns itself with the skin that is in contact with fabric, and then direct the mind to discover the warm layer of air that cushions the skin, that warm layer of air in between fabric and skin that gives you a slightly warmer experience of temperature than those exposed areas. Notice the ability to contrast experiences in order to define what warmth is, what coolness is, what exposed is. And then notice how peaceful you feel. Just because the mind has left its crazy stories behind, those conversations, those events, and you feel the stillness and the silence of this present moment, where many others around you, not only those who are participating in this practice, but every tree, every flower, every blade of grass, or is it us joining them? They have always been here in the present moment, but we have taken ourselves away into the past and into the future. But now we return back home, our birthright, into which we were born, free of the mind, free of pasts and free of futures. Before the mind gets too bored, because one thing you'll notice about the mind is it's so used to being stimulated. It likes stimulation. And as I guide you in this way, you may also notice boredom. But boredom is as precious a tool in this practice as anything else, simply because they are indicators as to how the mind likes to be stimulated by conversation, by likes, by dislikes, by hate, by love, by anger. And then we direct the mind to something new, just to keep its interest going. The breath. Again, something profound. Perhaps even our most precious of toys, of tools, of possessions. For a short contemplation will remind us how we can live without our cars and our homes and our bank accounts. We can live without food for days. We can live without water for days. But our breath, is it seconds? Is it minutes? And so we've convinced the mind that the breath is worthy of its attention, And then we draw the mind towards the breath. And when I refer to the breath, I simply refer to the sensations that we can experience, initially just through our nostrils. The in breath and the out. Simple things, keeping it as simple as possible. Because newness, it means a new birth, it means a new beginning. And it means being childlike, allowing yourself to smile, allowing yourself that curiosity of rediscovering. In fact, of discovering for the very first time what it feels like to breathe in, the interaction between air molecules and the ring around the nostrils, the surfaces of skin within the nasal passage, the temperature of the air, its coolness, its crispness. Notice how these different words, these different labels, they arise from that library called the mind, and we are continuing to utilize the mind, direct the mind, this moment, to this process called the breath. And now the exhalation and the releasing, where the temperature, it becomes so much more vivid as it is experienced as warmth. The humidity levels having increased as the air blows out, as it brushes against the upper lip, as it makes its way down towards the lip. And then changing the rhythm and the pace of your breath by breathing in as deeply as you can, and then breathing out as slowly, as quietly, and as gently as you can. And this time, as you breathe in, breathing in even more deeply, pausing, feeling that gap, the silence of the pause, taking in a little bit more air and breathing out even more slowly. As every sensation is magnified, the humidity, the warmth, the air making its way through the rims, through the tiny hairs within the nasal passage, anchoring you more deeply into the present moment, anchoring 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 us more deeply into awareness, that space beyond the mind, where we begin to surround the mind. The mind consisting of those soap bubbles, those tiny little whirls. One soap bubble representing the name that has been given to this form, this body that is sitting here or lying down and participating in this practice. This soap bubble approaching the needle of awareness and then popping as it touches the needle. What happens to the space within the bubble as that very thin membrane, that surface pops? It merges. The space within the bubble, it merges into the space all around us. That space that merges into the sky that merges into space, that space between every sky, behind every star. Gender, another bubble popping, feeling lighter. All of the awards that you ever accumulated from your degrees and qualifications, to everything else that you haven't quite achieved within one of the bubbles, a bubble that now approaches the needle called awareness, and then with the ringing of the bell pops. So that all judgments are released, all opinions, all standards, where there is only perfection, stillness, kindness, wisdom. A presence and awareness, which despite the ringing of the final bell in today's practice, we will continue to sustain as we watch our day unfold before us. From one breath to the next, never in a hurry, then from one moment to the next moment, which arrives always as the present moment.